Okay, so first things first is our skin prep, and I like to go in with these pads. I really like these because I feel like they give you a bit of a glow. They exfoliate your skin a little bit, so they help get rid of any dryness or dry patches that you may have. My next step is always a toner. Currently, I'm really liking this Anua one, but also the Thayer's brand is really good as well. It came out crazy. A little ASMR. And these products just give you such a nice glow and hydration back into your skin. I like to move on with my brows, but I always make sure that there's no product on there because then I feel like it starts getting some buildup. I always do a brow gel, and I have a few favorites, but the one that I'm using today is this L'Oreal one. I back comb first to coat all my hairs, and then I go and brush them back. I like to clean up my eyebrows with concealer, and this is my favorite concealer. Okay, I feel like we have that first brow down. To blend that out, I love to use this concealer brush. This is the brand, and it's my absolute favorite. I almost typically draw like a really light line right down the middle just to make sure that they're even, but nothing too heavy so we don't cake up that area too much. Okay, and then by now our face should have absorbed that toner, so now it's time for moisturize. I feel like my go-to is always this Embryolisse one, but if I'm not using that, I'm either using just the Pond's or a Neutrogena one. Okay, so moving back to the eyes, I'm not setting my concealer with anything. I'm going straight into the eyeshadow palette using the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes today. It's very beat up, it's very loved, it's one of my go-to palettes. So let's start off with one of the lighter shades first. I'm going in with this one. I'm starting out at the outer corner first and bringing it in through the crease. And I'm just continuing to build that up on the outer corner. I'm gonna repeat that same step on the other eye, starting on the outer corner and blending it in through the crease. I want a little bit more depth, so I'm gonna go in with a darker shadow. This time I'm going in with this one. Again, I'm starting out on the outer corner. Once I pack the shadow on there, I bring it in through the crease. For this part, I'm not using like a typical fluffy brush. This one's like a fluffy, flat brush, if that makes sense. And to make sure that everything just blends very seamlessly, I went back in with that first fluffy brush with no extra product on it and just blending out the edges. Taking another flat fluffy brush, I'm going to take a little bit of concealer on that just to brighten my inner corner. Dabbing off the excess on the back of my hand. That way I just have a little bit more control. And remember, less is always more. It's so much easier to build it up than to try and take some off. And because I don't want that concealer to crease, I'm actually setting it with some translucent powder. This is the Morphe one. For some reason, I feel like if you just set it with the eyeshadow, it tends to crease a little bit more. Now this next step you don't have to do, it's completely optional, but it makes it 10 times easier. It's using this lashing tape, and it's great to get that sharp outer edge without having to clean it up. I always follow my lower lash line, and that's kind of how I find my perfect spot. Okay, I'm using that same fluffy brush that we used to pack on the shadow, and now I'm going in with an even darker shade, which it would be this one. Now I'm putting that very, very close to my lash line and very close to the tape, just to give it like a blended winged liner effect. And lastly, I'm going in with that black shade right here. And again, I'm being very, very close to the lash line and the tape, not going past, really just kind of like the outline. Okay, because we are doing lashes today, I want to go in with a little bit of the gel liner. I really like this one from Anastasia. It's either this one or the Inglot one. I'm just going to create like a very, very thin liner. but I'm not messing with the outer corner at all. That was just what we wanted the liner for. So to add a little bit more brightness on that inner corner, now I'm going in with the shadow, with the lightest shadow from the palette, and just adding that brightness back. Now it's time for the reveal. I really like this tape because it's not as strong or as irritating as just like normal regular tape. Okay, for lashes, these are from Amazon, but I feel like they suit this look very well. They kind of have like a little cat eye effect, but nothing too crazy. I always like to trim my lashes. I feel like I have pretty big eyes and I still have to trim them. So if you're not trimming your lashes, then that's probably why they're bothering you. I start off with a little bit on the outer edge, and I always trim that little piece in the front. For lash glue, I always use this Kiss one. It's not the regular one. It has this gray cap. Does the other one have a gray cap? No, I think it's gold. But this one has a gray cap, and for some reason I feel like this one works a little bit better than the other one. And if you struggle placing your lashes, or you feel like once you put them on they lift up or they move, always apply a thin line of that same liner, a thin line of that same glue, I mean, is to stick onto so your lashes are not going crazy. That's one lash on. Now onto the next. Okay, so now that lashes are on, let's move on to our base. These are my two go-tos, but as you can see, one is too light and one is too dark, so we're gonna mix those. I didn't go in with any other primer. It was just those three products that I used at the beginning. So let me show you what has been a game changer in my routine. Bello sent me these sponges and I have been loving them. I am absolutely obsessed. I used to use just a regular sponge. What I love about these is that you don't have to wet them. So literally, if I'm already sitting down getting my makeup ready, like I don't have to run around trying to find water. And it blends your foundation super, super fast. And this is after blending out my whole base. Like it doesn't absorb the product or anything. Bronze up my face a little bit. I love using these mixed in with a little bit of concealer to kind of give you that perfect shade. And they blend out so nice. I'm using this sculpt brush from Morphe and I'm just gonna blend these two together. These are like the main areas that I apply my bronzer on. And I have a really big forehead, so let's bronze that up a lot. Now without any extra product, now I'm gonna blend it out. Now taking a brush like this, it's a little bit angled, fluffy as well. I'm taking any of the product that I have left and I'm using that to contour my nose. I always start with the tip, just like that, and then I just do two soft lines on each side where they kind of meet in a point. So the bottom or closer to the tip should be much more narrower. And after you've blended enough with your brush, I always like to do little taps with a sponge, whatever you were using, just to really blend that in. Now it's officially time for blush. I'm using the Morphe Cheek Thrills in the shade Blind Date. I'm also using their blush brush to apply it. And I like to focus more on the higher point and not drag it down too far. Now with whatever is left on that brush, I'm using it to kind of correct under my eyes. I'm going back in with my concealer. And then going back to this fluffy concealer blending brush. I start out with the outer edges first on both sides before I blend in. Using a brush to blend out my concealer has been a game changer. I feel like I don't lose a lot of the coverage like I would with a typical sponge. But even using this one is really good because it doesn't absorb so much of the product. But if you haven't tried a brush, you need to try it. And then to clean up a little bit more of that contour, I also bring it up here, kind of highlight those areas before finally going into the inner corner. I'm using that same Morphe powder to set my under eyes. So I always dab it into the powder and then I buff it out on the palm of my hand. You can see how that immediately just mattifies. Now to really brighten and highlight, I'm going in with that purple shade and under my eyes as well. Kind of feel like we already have enough warmth in our face, so I'm just gonna go in with the blush. And for blush, we're using that same trio, this time using the powder. Okay, so now moving on to our lower lash line, I'm taking that same fluffy brush that we used to brighten, but this time we're going in with a darker shade. Starting off with this one. I mean, it's not so dark, but it's still darker than the brightening shade. And I'm just gonna brush that right under. And then whatever is left on that other fluffy brush that we used, I'm just gonna darken up the outer corner the tiniest bit so it blends in with the top. Again, I'm not adding any more product because I don't want the bottom to be too dramatic. I always like to do mascara on my lower lashes, but I'm using a brown mascara. For brows, I'm using the NYX Micro Brow Pencil in the shade Black, but I'm being very light-handed with it. I like to just fill in a little bit of the sparse areas. I'm not doing anything crazy. See, I do have little, like, I guess you can call them beauty marks, and I always like to emphasize those. So with the same pencil, I'm just kind of highlighting them. We are almost done, but it is time for the lip. For lip liner, I'm going in with the Maybelline Lifter Liner in the shade Out of Line. I had to take a quick break because for some reason my nose always runs. So now that we have the outline, what I love to do when I line my lips is I always do a line down the middle on the top and lower lip. Today I'm feeling more of a glossy lip, so on top of that I'm using this Anastasia one. It is in the shade Guava. Now let's buff in this extra powder that we put in to brighten. I think it's been on there long enough. If you ever have like that stubborn powder that doesn't want to blend in or buff away, just go back in with your sponge. And then to melt all those powders in, let's go in with the Morphe setting mist. That always just feels so refreshing. And to make sure that nothing moves anywhere, this L'Oreal one. So this was the look for today. I don't know what you guys think. I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent on posting here, but I don't know. I will be trying, guys. So until next time, bye.